The most horrifying thought crept into the Ant King's mind. Could it be? An impossible idea sent shivers through him. Am I physically weaker than this human? Even though the man was only half the size of the magical beast. To understand how the ruler of Jeju Island came to feel fear for the first time, we must go back to where it all began. The Jeju Island raid had started in chaos. Screams echoed through the cavernous tunnels as hunters fell one by one to the monstrous army of ants. Smoke and dust hung thick in the air, mixing with the metallic tang of blood. Even the most seasoned S-rank hunters were being overpowered by the Ant King. Each strike they threw seemed futile. Each advance met with merciless force. Just when it seemed there was no way out, a presence shifted the battlefield. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, moving with purpose and precision. Sung Jinwoo had arrived. A cold, eerie wind blew in from the dark side of the cave. It carried something strange, something heavy and full of danger. Jinwoo froze for a second, his senses sharp as blades. He could feel it, a chilling, sinister energy creeping closer. His eyes swept through the shadows, and then he saw it. One of the ants stood out from the rest. At first glance, it looked just like the others, but Jinwoo could tell immediately this one was different. It was him, the Ant King. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. At the same time, the Ant King's attention locked onto him, and with a slow, confident stride, the creature began to approach. A deep, rumbling voice echoed through the cavern. "Human, the energy is strong in you." The other hunters, still trembling from the nightmare they'd just survived, instinctively stepped back. But Jinwoo didn't move. He stood firm, calm, cold, and ready, his glare fixed on the monstrous figure walking toward him. The Ant King stopped right in front of him. His sharp mandibles twitched. "Are you the king of the humans?" Jinwoo's voice was quiet but cutting. To think a bug could talk. The ant's face twisted in fury. The ground trembled as his body began to change. Drawing on the strength he had stolen from the queen and the dark power he'd built through predation, the Ant King gathered every drop of magic inside him. His body swelled. His shadow grew longer. He had once been the same height as Jinwoo, but in seconds, he loomed 1.5 times taller. Then came the most ferocious roar. It was deafening, a scream that shook the walls and echoed deep into the darkness. Dust fell from the ceiling as the cave itself seemed to tremble in fear. But Jinwoo didn't even blink. Instead, a faint grin appeared on his face. "You're finally starting to resemble a bug." The Ant King snapped. In a blur, his arm lashed out, a strike packed with all his monstrous power, and it smashed into Jinwoo's face. Around the cavern, the S-rank hunters were flabbergasted. Their eyes widened, jaws dropping in disbelief. Why is he getting this close to the Ant King, they wondered. Jinwoo was a magic hunter after all. Anyone with their skills would have kept their distance, relying on ranged attacks to avoid such a deadly strike. But to everyone's surprise, Jinwoo didn't flinch. He held his ground. His boots dug into the stone floor, cracking it beneath him, as if asserting that no force could move him. The Ant King froze. That strike had everything behind it, raw, overwhelming strength, yet the human barely moved. Even the Ant King, ruler of this island, could barely comprehend what had just happened. "You withstood my power?" The Ant King growled, incredulous. The blow had been meant to kill, but all it did was tilt Jinwoo's head slightly to the side. The hunters exchanged glances, their disbelief deepening. How is he even human? Before the Ant King could even react, Jinwoo's fist shot forward, slamming into the ant's face with unstoppable force. His punch connected cleanly with the ant's face, a perfect, brutal hit. The Ant King was hurled backward like a missile, slamming into the wall behind him. Around the cavern, the other S-rank hunters stood frozen, their faces pale, eyes wide with disbelief. They had fought countless dangerous foes and even faced the S-rank Queen Ant together, yet here they were, helplessly witnessing a single human dominate the Ant King. Is he really holding his own? Each strike Jinwoo delivered seemed impossible, pushing back the Ant King, breaking cracks into its impenetrable exoskeleton, moving faster than any of them could follow. Whispers of shock and awe rippled through the hunters. Some couldn't hide their trembling hands. Others simply stared, baffled, struggling to reconcile what their eyes were seeing. How can one human be this strong? In that moment, even the veterans realized they had never seen power like this, and the gap between Jinwoo and all others became blindingly clear. The cave trembled violently. Dust swirled like mist after a storm, debris raining down around him. The wall behind the Ant King had completely caved in, cracked and shattered as if a meteor had smashed through it. And in that chaos, Jinwoo's voice cut through, cold, sharp, and laced with mockery. What kind of ant talks that much? If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment saying Season 3. Your support will inspire me to create the narration for the next season. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, whoa! The cameraman's voice broke through the shock. His jaw practically hit the floor. He had seen that same ant before, seen the moment it struck Hunter Cha down with terrifying ease. Back then, he could barely keep his camera steady. The sight alone had made his stomach twist. But now, that same monster, the one that had toyed with 6 S-rank hunters like they were helpless children, was sent flying by a single punch from Hunter Sung Jinwoo. The cameraman couldn't help it. His shout wasn't planned. It burst out of him before he could think. His mind raced. Were the other S-rank hunters really that weak? No, that couldn't be true. These were heroes, the very ones who had risked everything and slain the S-rank Queen Ant herself. They weren't weak. They couldn't be. And yet, how? How could this one man, even if he was a hunter, even if he wielded magic, overpower the creature that had nearly wiped them all out? The thought alone sent chills down his spine. He swallowed hard. Around him, the other hunters stood frozen, their faces pale, eyes wide, each trapped between awe and disbelief. The silence lingered for only a moment before it was shattered by an unexpected roar that tore through the cave, echoing off the jagged walls. The Ant King was seething, dragging himself out of the rubble he had created. Dust swirled around him as the very air seemed to vibrate with tension. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. He studied the ant carefully, curiosity mixed with caution. The creature had taken less damage than he had expected. Is it because of his exoskeleton? The hard, glistening shell covering the Ant King's entire body was unlike anything Jinwoo had ever encountered. It was stronger than any known organic material, a natural armor that no ordinary weapon could pierce. Jinwoo's expression hardened. This wouldn't be a fight for finesse. He wouldn't slice and dice with daggers this time. He needed raw, crushing force. A hammer, not a blade. The muscles on Jinwoo's shoulders and arms bulged, tensing as he prepared for the next strike. The air around him grew heavy, thick with anticipation and the raw pressure of mana. The Ant King finished his roar, his mandibles snapping. He spun to face Jinwoo, fury blazing in his black eyes. How dare you? Without hesitation, the distance between them vanished. They hurtled toward each other, two forces of nature colliding with terrifying speed. Their fists and magic collided with explosive force, sending shockwaves through the cavern. Rocks rattled and dust plumed into the air as the floor cracked beneath the intensity of the battle. Even the S-rank hunters, who had faced countless deadly opponents, felt their stomachs turn at the waves of mana pulsing outward. The cameraman gagged, barely holding back. His stomach twisted as he tried to process the chaos unfolding before him. "Are you okay?" one of the other hunters asked, worry etched across their face. "Yes, I'm fine," he stammered, forcing a weak smile. Compared to the others, he was only an A-rank hunter, and the sheer force and intensity of the battle made his head spin. Every punch, every roar from the Ant King pressed down on him like a storm he couldn't escape. His face was pale, clammy with sweat, but somehow he kept smiling. His heart thundered in his chest, pounding like a war drum against the chaos surrounding him. How could one man, a lone hunter, keep pace with a creature so massive, so powerful? And yet, there he was, Jinwoo, standing firm, striking blow after blow, matching the Ant King with skill, strength, and sheer will. Hope surged through the cameraman, a fragile, electrifying hope. Maybe this fight wasn't impossible. Maybe victory was possible. The cavern shook violently as Jinwoo's fist slammed into the Ant King, the force echoing like a thunderclap. Dust and rock rained from the ceiling as the immense power of the strike reverberated through the chamber. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment saying Season 3. Your support will inspire me to create the narration for the next season. Jinwoo wasn't unharmed. The Ant King's attacks were devastating. Yet, even as the human absorbed the punishment, the Ant King's shell, once flawless and impenetrable, began to crack. Tiny fissures spread across his armored body, each one a testament to Jinwoo's growing power. Tiny fractures split across his chitin, sharp and metallic, a sound that cut through the cavern like a warning. The Ant King's exoskeleton, harder than any known metal, had begun to show delicate hairline cracks. In comparison, his opponent, the human, seemed almost unscathed, enduring each of the Ant King's brutal blows without faltering. A horrifying thought crept into the Ant King's mind. Could it be? An impossible idea sent shivers through him. Am I physically weaker than this human? Even though the man was only half the size of the magical beast. Before the Ant King could dwell on the thought, a sudden strike landed, striking his side differently than before. The force was sharp, unmistakable. His armor was giving way. The Ant King glanced down at his exoskeleton. It had split open. A small fissure, delicate yet sinister, spread across his body like a spiderweb. Each fracture screamed a warning. Time was running out. He whirled back toward Jinwoo, trying to refocus on the fight. But Jinwoo wasn't some inexperienced novice who would hesitate while his opponent was distracted. The Ant King's head jerked violently from a punishing blow. His jaw shuddered under the strike, staggering him despite his normally impenetrable facial armor. He barely regained his balance before another strike drove against his chin, forcing his head upward from the sheer force. This inferior creature is... The Ant King could only glare down, mandibles trembling in fury. The human was strong, overwhelmingly strong. But brute force was all he had. The Ant King still had deadly tricks and weapons hidden within his monstrous body, and the moment had come. He snapped his head back into position, moving with terrifying precision. From the tip of a long, writhing tentacle, a venomous needle shot forward with lethal precision, aimed directly at the human's face, a close-range strike nearly impossible to avoid. Jinwoo's instincts kicked in instantly. He jerked his head aside, narrowly evading the deadly needle. But the Ant King's mandibles curled in satisfaction. The needle had grazed Jinwoo's cheek. Got him. For the Ant King, that small injury was enough. He had absorbed a deadly skill from cone snails, a poison called paralysis venom, the most lethal toxin any living creature could produce. By combining it with his magic, the Ant King had created a concentrated, monstrous venom, manufacturing it inside his body through predation. "You've given me a hard time, human," the Ant King growled, mandibles clicking with menace. Even the slightest scratch from his venomous needle could paralyze the nervous system in an instant, leaving any opponent helpless. Once the toxin spread, all he would have to do was crush his enemy completely. Jinwoo's eyes flickered in confusion as the venom began to course through his body. The Ant King lashed out with a claw aimed straight at Jinwoo's face. Jinwoo raised his left hand just in time, stopping the lethal strike with a resounding clash. Before the Ant King could react, Jinwoo's other fist swung with brutal precision, sending the massive creature tumbling across the den. For the first time, a cry of pain tore from the Ant King, echoing through the cavern. Jinwoo's attention flicked to the familiar electronic chime. Detoxing is complete. Ah, that explained it. No wonder the Ant King had seemed so confused whenever Jinwoo moved unhindered. What Jinwoo found truly fascinating wasn't the detox buff itself, but the ability he'd unknowingly gained to sense the emotions of magic beasts. He thought back to his battle against the High Orcs. He had assumed then that he was reading emotions through their facial expressions and gestures, but the Ant King wasn't humanoid. Expressionless except for rare distortions, the beast's thoughts had been nearly impossible to read. Until now. Is this due to my perception stat? All his stats had increased drastically. Perhaps his perception stat had reached a level that unlocked this new ability. No time to dwell on theories now. His focus had to remain on killing the beast and getting off the island alive. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment saying Season 3. Your support will inspire me to create the narration for the next season. Jinwoo charged at the Ant King, who struggled to rise. He could feel it, creature's panic, subtle yet unmistakable. The continuous attacks had merely shattered its exoskeleton. Just a little more. Closing the distance in an instant, Jinwoo leapt, executing a flying kick aimed directly at the beast. But the Ant King was already gone. "Where did he go?" a hunter shouted. "He disappeared." While the others frantically scanned the cavern, Jinwoo calmly looked up. The Ant King had taken to the air, wings beating with terrifying speed, hovering just above their heads. "This is quite convenient," Jinwoo thought, a smirk tugging at his lips. Tracking the Ant King now was simple. His emotions were like an open book. The creature had shifted from panicked to nervous, and now, intriguingly, to delighted. The Ant King, sensing the human's specialty in raw physical strength, decided a head-on clash was pointless. If he relies on brute force, there's no need to face him directly. The Ant's true power lay in speed. That was how he had effortlessly defeated Goto, the man who had falsely claimed to be the king of humans. Fighting Jinwoo straight on had only been a show, a vain attempt at dominance. Now the Ant King would use his other abilities to their fullest. He shrank back to his normal size, his claws elongating into razor-sharp blades. Jinwoo watched closely, sensing the shift in the creature's tactics. He's changing his attack method. Jinwoo's hands moved instinctively. 2 daggers emerged from his inventory, gripped tightly. The Ant King dove at him with incredible speed, a blur of lethal intent. Time seemed to slow for Jinwoo. Every movement of the Ant King, each twist, slash, and lunge was crystal clear. High-speed combat was Jinwoo's element, and now he thrived. The king's claws came fast, deadly, but Jinwoo blocked them effortlessly with tips of his daggers. The ant landed on the ground, and Jinwoo spun to face him, meeting him head-on. Hunter Beck's eyes strained as he tried to keep up with the exchange. His heart pounded in his chest, and sweat dripped down his forehead. He could barely follow their speed,
every movement a blur of fists, claws, and flashes of magic. The other S-rank hunters weren't so lucky. No matter how hard they focused, they couldn't even track the pace of the Ant King and Jinwoo. Every strike, every dodge, every shift of momentum was too fast, too precise. The cavern had become a storm of chaotic motion, and all they could do was watch, awestruck and helpless. Metal scraped against chitin as the Ant King struck and Jinwoo countered. Sparks flew with each collision, the force of their attacks reverberating through the cavern. With each clash, the Ant King grew more unnerved. Impossible, he thought. His opponent was as fast as he was, no faster, and with each passing moment, Jinwoo seemed to accelerate, as if his muscles had just hit their peak. How can this be? The Ant King, who had resisted losing ground in their battle of strength, now found himself sliding backward, step by step, retreating. With each backward step, cracks spidered further across his exoskeleton, and the farther he retreated, the more confident Jinwoo grew. Jinwoo could sense the ant's growing distress. The creature was starting to falter, its composure cracking along with its armor. In Jinwoo's eyes, the Ant King wasn't stronger or faster than Alan, the demon monarch. Objectively, the ant might even be on the same level as Alan, or perhaps slightly higher. But Jinwoo himself had grown far stronger since that battle. The countless levels and completion rewards for the Demon's Castle quests had sharpened his strength to a new peak. Putting myself through all that, it was worth it. Now, facing this formidable opponent, Jinwoo could feel a full measure of his growth. Every movement, every strike pulsed with exhilarating power. As the king stumbled another step backward, Jinwoo advanced, closing the distance in 2 confident strides, and then, with precision and force, delivered the fatal strike. If you enjoyed the story, leave comments saying Season 3. Your support will inspire me to create the narration for the next season. Yes, the dreaded fatal strike. His dagger finally pierced the Ant King's armor. Fatal Strike was a skill that dealt extra damage when striking an enemy's weak point. With cracks spidering across the Ant King's entire exoskeleton, the creature's body had become one giant, vulnerable target. Tens of fatal strikes rained down consecutively, each one finding its mark, tearing into the cracks of the Ant King's exoskeleton, chipping away at both his defenses and his resolve. A sharp notification chimed. Skill Fatal Strike has been upgraded to its ultimate version, Skill Mutilation. Mutilation? Jinwoo blinked, a spark of exhilaration lighting his eyes. Without hesitation, he put his new skill to use. In an instant, his dagger struck the Ant King's weak points again and again, mutilating the beast with deadly precision. The Ant King howled, a sound of pure agony echoing through the cavern. While the creature writhed in pain, Jinwoo's blade struck once more. A long black limb fell limply to ground, severed. Desperation overtook the Ant King. Pride, revenge, all abandoned. Survival instincts surged the forefront. With a mighty push, he launched himself to the air, wings flaring, intent on escaping. But Jinwoo wasn't about to let him get away. The Ant King sensed the hunter closing in and glanced back, his eyes widening. The human is flying? Jinwoo had propelled himself upward with ruler's hand, chasing the airborne king without hesitation. In a swift, precise strike, he cut off one of the Ant King's wings. The Ant King began to plummet toward the ground, panic twisting through his massive frame. I have to think of something I'm better at. Strength, speed, even a secret weapon, venom, had failed against a human. Every advantage he had relied upon had crumbled. He was running out of options. Did he not possess a single edge? Then, just before despair consumed him, the Ant King remembered one last resource: numbers. The human was but one opponent, while he commanded an army of thousands of ants. His loyal warriors waited, ready to strike at his command. With his remaining hand, the Ant King pointed at Jinwoo, struggling to pull himself upright. The furious screech echoed through the cavern, and the swarm of ants poured inside, rushing to their king's side. "What now, human?" The scream didn't waver. It was a desperate attempt to reclaim pride and bolster the morale of his soldiers. The Ant King leveled a confident gaze at Jinwoo. But even as he tried to assert dominance, a sea of shadows surged from the other side of the den. "Go," Jinwoo commanded his army. The monarch's domain, still active from earlier, amplified his shadow soldiers, empowering them to charge with terrifying speed and strength. The cavern trembled with the thunderous footsteps of Jinwoo's shadow soldiers, echoing like a storm of steel and shadow. Last but not least, Jinwoo summoned Fang. The monstrous creature looked around, scratching the back of his head as if feeling awkward at being called forth all on his own. Jinwoo's voice was firm as he handed Fang the sphere of avarice. "Only target the ants. If so much as a spark touches any of humans, I won't be summoning you ever again." Fang gave a confident nod. Then, after sizing himself up with the Song of Giants, he unleashed tremendous pillars of fire. Even though Jinwoo had seen Fang perform this countless times, he couldn't help but be amazed. The flames, they keep getting bigger. Perhaps it was because Fang's level had increased. While Jinwoo marveled at the familiar sight, the other hunters were utterly stunned. They had been intently watching the battle between Jinwoo and the Ant King when suddenly a monstrous minion appeared before them. They all gasped, some more loudly than others. "That's a minion? You're honestly telling me that's a minion?" Taegu yelped, pointing at Fang. The other hunters' mouths hung open in disbelief. From Fang's sheer size and devastating abilities, he seemed more like a demon king incarnate than a mere servant. Meanwhile, the ants were incinerated by Fang's blazing pillars, one after another. The Ant King began to tremble. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment saying Season 3. Your support will inspire me to create the narration for the next season. These are the Jinwoo soldiers. Hundreds of Ant King's loyal subjects incinerated in less than a minute, consumed by the Fang flames. For the first time in his life, the Ant King felt true fear. An insurmountable wall of power loomed between him and this human. He realized utterly and completely that there was no way to overwhelm this enemy. He had been defeated, but how? Even though he had been born to fight powerful humans, that had been the Ant King's only purpose in life. He nurtured his power for this mission, even absorbing the abilities of humans along the way, and yet he could defeat Jinwoo. The Ant King quivered, turning his back on the fight. Survival instinct overtook all else. Concern for his kingdom and soldiers vanished from his mind. Thanks to healing skill he had acquired from a human, his severed wing regenerated almost instantly. With a powerful beat of his wings, he shot into the air. "I must get as far away." But before he could escape, the massive magic beast plummeted to the ground as an invisible force slammed down from above. Fluid sprayed from his mouth as he crashed into the cave floor. Jinwoo had used Ruler's hand like a fly swatter, and he strode toward the Ant King without hesitation. "I can't let him go." The king was a powerful magic beast, and Jinwoo wanted to extract his shadow no matter what. But to do that, he needed to kill him first. The Ant King saw Jinwoo approaching, and terror replaced the pride he once carried. Jinwoo almost felt a flicker of pity. The Ant King tried to crawl away. Gone was the majestic, commanding presence he had displayed when toying with the other hunters. "There, you're finally acting like an insect." Jinwoo closed the distance and unleashed Mutilation into the Ant King's back. A notification appeared immediately. "You have defeated an enemy, ... You have leveled up. You have leveled up. Yes. Jinwoo pumped his fist, exhilaration coursing through him. The battle was over. The battlefield fell silent. Jinwoo stood before the remains of the Ant King, the fallen monarch whose very presence had once shaken the world. Now the beast lay motionless at his feet. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from desire. This one. He wanted this one as his soldier. Jinwoo could feel the hunger in his chest, the urge to claim the creature's shadow immediately. But he remembered, extraction required focus. He thought back to when he had drawn Byung-gu's shadow. He had learned painfully that emotion could cloud precision. "I need to calm down," he whispered. He closed his eyes, taking a deep, measured breath. The storm inside him stilled. His heartbeat steadied. His gaze, now cool and sharp, returned to the Ant King's remains. "Okay." He raised his hand. Dark, swirling plumes of smoke began to rise from the corpse, thicker and heavier than anything he had ever seen. It coiled and twisted like living darkness, warping the air around it with immense power. Was this because the Ant King's magic energy was far beyond anything he had faced before? Jinwoo's eyes narrowed as he stepped closer. "Arise." The word fell from his lips like a command from the heavens. Chaos followed. The entire cavern flickered between light and shadow, as if reality itself struggled to contain what was happening. The bright magic light above, the one that mage hunter Choi Jong-in had conjured during the raid, began to blink violently, like a dying star. "What's going on?" Jinwoo muttered. At first, he thought the spell was simply fading, but that couldn't be. It hadn't even been an hour since the hunters entered the nest. There was no reason the magic should be weakening this fast, not with Jong-in's strength. Then the thought struck him. Could it be because of this? Because of shadow extraction itself. Everything went black. When the light returned, Jinwoo's eyes widened. Before him stood a massive silhouette, a creature cloaked in pure darkness. The Ant King, but not as he once was. Jinwoo instinctively took a step back, hand tightening around his dagger, until a chime rang in his mind. Shadow extraction, success. He froze, then let out a breathless laugh. "Whew, that scared me." The new shadow loomed before him, wreathed in thick, endless smoke. The same monstrous form, but now entirely black, as if carved from living shadow. Jinwoo studied him in silence. Even in death, the Ant King radiated overwhelming power. The air itself seemed to bend around him. So this was the Ant King's shadow. The mighty beast that had once brought despair to S-rank hunters now stood obediently before Jinwoo. He could feel the sheer density of magic energy pulsing from the creature. It was greater, sharper, alive. He tried to keep a straight face but couldn't stop the grin forming on his lips. His heart raced, excitement coursing through him like a drumbeat. A notification appeared before him, glowing faintly in the air. Level 1. General rank. Jinwoo's eyes widened, and then he smiled. This wasn't just another soldier. This was something beyond what he had ever summoned. A new rank. A new power. Considering how powerful the Ant King had been in life, it made perfect sense. By rank alone, Jinwoo could tell this was no ordinary shadow. All his effort, every ounce of strength he had poured into this battle, had been worth it. The massive shadow lifted its head, their eyes met, and the creature slowly lowered himself, dropping to one knee. Just like the rest of Jinwoo's soldiers, this one knelt in absolute loyalty before his king. A faint smile crossed Jinwoo's lips. Nice. Satisfied, he turned, ready to extract the queen's shadow next. My king! Jinwoo froze. That voice, deep echoing, came from right behind him. His heart skipped a beat. Didn't get startled easily, but this time it was close. Did he just hear that? He turned sharply, scanning the darkness, but there was no one else. Only one presence registered in his perception. The shadow ant, still kneeling with his head bowed. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment saying Season 3. Your support will inspire me to create the narration for the next season. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. Slowly, he faced him again. The shadow raised his head slightly, and his voice came again, halting, rough, but clear. Please, permit me a name. Jinwoo blinked. His mind raced. How can you talk? I just can. His voice was strained, broken, but undeniably real. Jinwoo's thoughts spun. Why could this one speak when none of the others ever could? Iron, once a proud human hunter, was silent. Byunggu had been mute. Even Fang, who had once spoken with a beast's cunning intelligence, had gone silent after rebirth. So why this one? Then realization hit him. The difference wasn't in who they were, it was what they were. Their rank. All the others had been knights or elites. But this one, this shadow, carried a rank Jinwoo had never seen before. General. Maybe, when a shadow ascends high enough, they regain their voice. A theory, but one that made Jinwoo's pulse quicken. Maybe, one day, all of them will speak again. He exhaled softly and looked down at the shadow kneeling before him. There was something else he needed to know. I was the one who killed you, he said quietly. The shadow didn't answer immediately. So why do you follow me so easily? The creature lifted his head, eyes burning with faint blue light. He began slowly, did not die. Jinwoo's brows furrowed. I was reborn by my master power. The voice grew steadier, clearer with every word. Within my body now, there is overflowing joy. I will follow only my master for eternity. Jinwoo's chest tightened. His heartbeat quickened, not from fear, but from the overwhelming weight of the moment. He could feel the sincerity in the shadow's words. It wasn't submission, it was devotion. He pressed a hand to his chest, forcing his heartbeat to slow. The shadow bowed even lower. My king, please permit me a name. There it was again, the same humble plea. For the first time, Jinwoo was being asked, not by the system, but by one of his own soldiers. A name. He couldn't just call him ant or bug. That wouldn't do justice to the being kneeling before him. He thought for a moment, then smiled. Beru, he said finally. The shadow lifted his head slightly. Your name is Beru. The name came from an old science fiction story about an empire of ants. Fitting, he thought. Perfect. Thank you, master. Beru bowed once more, his massive frame lowering until his head nearly touched the ground. Above him, glowing faintly in the air, the system text changed. Beru, level 1. General rank. Jinwoo looked at his new soldier, his very first general. A calm, quiet satisfaction spread through him. He regarded the new name with pride and turned his eyes settling on the next target. It was time for the queen. Jinwoo turned his gaze toward the massive corpse, his confidence surging after Beru's successful summon. The thrill of victory still lingered in the air. He took a steady breath, raised his hand, and spoke with quiet command. Arise. The ground trembled. A low hum built into a thunderous screech. From the queen's lifeless shell, a towering shadow emerged, its form identical to the monstrous ruler that had once led the ants. The echo of his cry shook the cavern walls. Jinwoo smiled silently. Nice. But the moment of triumph was short-lived. His expression shifted as he sensed something off. The connection between him and his shadow ant soldiers began to blur, like a line of smoke fading in fog. The link that tied them together had weakened. Bear. Before he could finish, Beru appeared beside him with silent precision. Even with Jinwoo's heightened perception, the general's speed was nearly impossible to track. For such a creature to now stand at his side, completely loyal, it made Jinwoo's confidence soar even higher. Do you know what's happening here? He asked, gesturing toward the Shadow Queen. Beru stood tall, his voice deep and certain. Ruling the army of ants is the Queen's unique ability. Jinwoo realized instantly. So the control of the entire ant army had transferred to her the moment she was reborn. That was inconvenient. Even if the queen served under him, he wouldn't be able to command the soldiers directly anymore. Jinwoo rubbed his chin deep in thought. And why did her magic power decrease? Beru answered without hesitation. Most of the queen's magic power is for breeding. Breeding cannot occur without a physical body. So, Jinwoo cut him off, finishing the thought. That's why her magic power is half of what it used to be. That is correct, Master. Piece by piece, the situation became clear. The queen was powerful but not useful to him. She would only occupy precious space within his ranks. With a quiet sigh, Jinwoo made his decision. Then there's no reason to keep her. The Shadow Queen let out one final cry before dissolving into a swirl of black smoke that vanished into the air. A system message appeared before his eyes. Number of shadows stored 570. He had already reached his limit. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment saying Season 3. Your support will inspire me to create the narration for the next season.